Good evening. Come in. Welcome to my world. I'm Al Wilson, and I'm sitting around trying to make myself look good enough to go on stage in about 10 minutes. And the band's running around. I'm trying to get everybody hooked up and getting my show list together. And tonight we're going to do something really unique. I'm going to pay tributes to some of the guys that I had the pleasure of growing up listening to, some of my idols, and some of the guys that I learned so much from, like Nat King Cole and David Ruffin. Of course, we grew up together in Mississippi, and we used to feed off of each other, so consequently we made each other better. And Otis Redding, of course, I'm going to pay a tribute to him. And of course, I'm going to pay a tribute to Ed Townsend. But then I'm going to do some of my recordings also, like Show and Tell and The Snake, and we're going to party on down with the Drifters medley. Yeah, well, The Snake, back in 1968, Johnny Rivers and I were looking for material to record, and we were in Memphis to do some stuff with Chip Moments, and it didn't work out. And so Johnny kind of got all upset, and he said, well, man, let's go back home and sit down and put this stuff together ourselves. And I said, well, hey, it's okay with me. He said, well, what do you think about that song, The Snake? I said, well, I've been doing it on my shows for I don't know how long, since Oscar Brown Jr. wrote it. And he said, well, you'd like to record it? I said, sure. So then we came back, and I said, well, look, there's another song I like, man. So we got The Snake down, and the rest is history. For Your Love, it was written by, well, first of all, I was performing at the Hollywood Casino at Hollywood Park back in 1997, and I was singing this song, For Your Love. And the guy was at the edge of the stage. He said, come here, come here. So I go over and I listen, while this solo is going on. And he said, you know the guy that recorded that song? I said, yeah, Ed Townsend. He said, well, there he is over. He's always out here gambling, man. He's always playing. I said, are you serious? So then I looked over, and Ed waved at me and gave me a high five in his approval of what I was doing to his song and how he liked it. So I loved it, and I've always done For Your Love. Lodi was another one of the songs that Johnny and I came up with when we were in the middle of trying, looking for songs for a recording session. And I just happened to, I had just bought this 45 by Creedence Clearwater, and they had Bad Moon Rising. And I happened to turn it over, and on the other side, there was this Lodi. And I started listening to it, and I really, really fell in love with it. And I told Johnny, I said, hey, man, I found another song to go along with The Snake, so let's do Lodi. He said, man, that's great. I like it too. You beat me to it. Well, Dock of the Bay, Otis Redding was my all-time favorite because everything, as a matter of fact, I have an album that I did, and it's called A Tribute to Otis Redding. And it was one of those karaoke things where you put the vocal on one side and the track on the other. And I did Can't Turn You Loose, These Arms of Mine. I did all Otis stuff, and I just fell in love with his stuff, and he was one of the greatest influences in my life. And that's why I did the album to him, A Tribute to Otis Redding. And Dock of the Bay, I always do on my shows. Knock on wood. There was a group of guys, a group called the Hawkins, and they did a thing called I Found a Love. And there were 3 singers in that group, Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, and another guy by the name of Eddie Floyd. And Eddie Floyd had just recorded Knock on Wood, and I ended up meeting him. I had a tour that I did with Smokey Robinson, and I didn't know he was going to be on it, Eddie Floyd, that is. And when I got back to Pittsburgh, Eddie was on the show. Well, I had to change up one of my songs because Knock on Wood was on my show. I was doing a cover. And that's how I met Eddie Floyd, and I always pay a tribute to it. There was a group of guys called the Hawkins. 3 voices, man. Eddie Floyd, Wilson Pickett, and Otis Redding. And they recorded a thing called I Found a Love. And then each one of them went off on their own and started recording. And when Eddie recorded Knock on Wood, I fell in love with it, and I started doing it on my shows. And lo and behold, I got booked on a tour with Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. And who's on the show? Eddie Floyd. So I go back to Pittsburgh, and I got my show list all ready. And first thing I see is Eddie Floyd's on the show. I hurried up and changed my show, so I had to put something else in the place of Knock on Wood, because I can see him now. if I get up there and do his hit before he come on. But I always pay a tribute to Eddie Floyd. He'll be here forever. My girl. Yeah. Well, David Ruffin and I grew up in Meridian, Mississippi. And he left Meridian, like I always say. He left Meridian and went to Detroit and joined a group called the Temptations. And I left Meridian and came to California and joined a group called the Navy. But, you know, I always pay a tribute to David. The last, we had planned to do some shows back home before he passed. And this is the way I keep his name going. I always pay a tribute to my old buddy. My old buddy, boom, ba, ba, boom, da, da, boom, da, da. Because what I'm hearing is underneath my last syllable is that
tribute to what you're singing. Yes.
Is that music?
Yes.
Right, my old buddy, boom, ba, ba, boom, ba, ba. Well, yeah, and I always pay a tribute to Otis Redding. Boom, boom, down, down. That's what I'm saying. Not even a breath between. You know what I'm saying? That way, it'll keep me from. Nat King Cole was one of my greatest idols. I listened to everything he did, you know, and I sung every song. I tried every way I could. They tried to tell us where to eat. All those songs, everything Nat King Cole did. But my favorite was Route 66, man, because I could sing it, jazz it up, jam it up, and dance with it, you know. And I always pay a tribute to Nat King Cole, and I do that, Route 66. And one of my other favorites of Nat King Cole's was I Can Only, That's All. And I'd use those two to pay a tribute to Nat because he was so great, you know, with up-tempo stuff and jazz-type tunes and blues. And so that it displayed his talents from one end to the other. So I always do Route 66 jamming, and that's all loving. Clyde McPhatter, Roosevelt Miles, Johnny Moore, George Treadwell. Well, George Treadwell organized the group, but all the guys, Benny King, who came through and joined them. We're talking about the Drifters, of course. I always, in any of my shows, I pay a tribute to the Drifters because they had so many hits, man, that you can just keep singing Drifter songs forever and never stop, you know. So I put Stand By Me, Up on the Roof, and Under the Boardwalk, and I always pay a tribute to all the guys, Johnny Moore, Benny King, Clyde McPhatter, well, Bill Pinkney just passed away also, and he's one of the greats who were with the Drifters. Show and Tell was written by Jerry Fuller, one of the best songwriters, producers the world has ever had, and a very good friend, dynamite human being. Jerry wrote songs for just about everybody in the industry, from Ricky Nelson to O.C. Smith. And, well, he was Johnny Mathis's producer. As a matter of fact, Show and Tell, my first demo was done by Johnny Mathis of Show and Tell. Can you believe that? I learned Show and Tell on a demo from Johnny Mathis. No, he had recorded it on Johnny, and Columbia Records wouldn't release it as a single. So when I met him, he said, "Man, I got the perfect song for you." And I went to his office the next day, and the rest is history. Clyde McPhatter, Johnny Moore, Benny King, Bill Pinkney. I'm talking about a group that George Treadwell put together and ended up calling themselves the Drifters. I always pay a tribute to these guys because of all the groups, man. They had more recordings that you could link together and sing all day long and never stop. So whenever I do a show, I always end up putting on Stand By Me, Up on the Roof, and Under the Boardwalk together as my tribute to the Dynamite Drifters forever. The Snake. That was one of the songs that I had been singing for years, man. Well, a few years on my shows at supper clubs, because it was written by Oscar Brown Jr. as a jazz blues type of tune, you know, and that's all the exposure it got. And then when I got with Johnny Rivers, of course, he had just recorded it live at the Whiskey, and it was becoming known. And he said, "Man, what do you think about that song, The Snake?" I said, "Well, I love it, man. I do it all the time." He said, you serious? I said, yeah. He said, well, would you like to record it? I said, you just recorded it, didn't you? He said, yeah, but mine is different, man. It would be nothing like yours. I said, well, hey, I love it. I'm already singing it, so let's do it. It's one song I won't have to learn. So we recorded The Snake. Well, okay, let's see that I want to tell the story.
Okay.
But I'm as I'm trying to think about it, I'm thinking about things that happened. You know what I mean? That led up to where I am. And well, in '72 we were looking for material to record because I hadn't had a hit in a couple of years, and we'd gone through I don't know how many producers, man, and nothing ever. You know, I did an album called Weighing In, and had about 10 producers on it, and nothing ever came of it. And then I started working with a little band out in Chino called Johnny Fortune. And Mark, my manager, was back in New York at the time, looking for material and, you know, trying to find a decent producer. And he ran into Jerry Fuller at a party. And at the party was Irv Beagle, who was the vice president of Bell Records. And as a matter of fact, I was on Bell at the time. And he told Mark, he said, man, did you ever find a producer for Al? And he said, no, we're looking. And he said, I know a guy, man, who would be perfect. So he introduced Jerry to Mark. And they got back here. And I had never met Jerry. Man, I'm just,
That's okay, that's okay.
Really, I'm serious. I wanna do it right. Stuff you're asking me, man, it didn't even bother me because I was so busy working. When Show and Tell went #1, I was working in Oakland at New Ruthie's, you know, and how did that feel? Oh, well, yeah, it felt great, you know, to have a #1 record because that's what it's all about. You know, that's what all the hitchhiking and the fasting and the penny pinching, you know, it's a feeling that thank God I had already read If, because you could have gotten caught up in a whole lot of stuff because when I took, that's what kept my feet on the ground, is the fact that I did read If. And, you know, there are two imposters that you can get caught up with if you go one side or too far with the other. And I kind of went down the middle of the road and thanked my Savior for letting it be and, you know, tried to get another one. That's basically what it was all about.
What was the album that you were in front of that car?
That was Show and Tell.
That was the show.
That was Show and Tell album. That
Whose
was
car was that now?
Hal Blaine's Rolls-Royce Phantom. Yeah, and boy, now I'm getting ready to talk about him. You can see him coming down Sunset Boulevard any warm day. Yeah, that was a beautiful car, man. We had a ball doing it. But yeah, Jerry was one of the most unique producers that I'd ever worked with, primarily because he drove from Sherman Oaks to Encino to Nayrod's, which was a little club. And he sat there we were doing like from 9 till 2. So I'm doing 5 sets a night, man. And he sat there from 9 o'clock until 2 o'clock. And at the end of the night, he got up and he said, man, I got the perfect song for you, because I was singing everything from blues to jazz to country. Yeah, and he sat there from 9 o'clock until, you know, at the end of the night, he said, I got the perfect song for you. And he said, meet me in the office about 10 in the morning. So I got to the office, and he had this album on. And it was Show and Tell, Johnny Mathison. I said, man, what do you want me to do? I said, what's wrong with Johnny's version? I said, what is it that I can do that he can't do with it? He said, well, I want to produce you on it because Columbia decided to release Ariane as a single instead of show and tell. So they wanted to leave it as an album cut. And I think it's a single. I said, well, I do too. He said, I said, well, take Johnny's off, get the guitar, and let's start working on it, because I don't want Johnny, I don't want to learn it from Johnny. I want to learn it from you, you know what I mean? I said, because I want to do my own thing on it. And he picked up the guitar, and the rest is history. I never had one bit of doubt about this song. The old saying goes, a hit song starts with the words. After I heard the words, I said, man, we got to hear. All we got to do is record it. And he said, I told you, man, let's record it. So I went in and from day one, from the time it was a demo, from the time they put it on the acetate, from the time we went to the mastering lab, the feelings just grew bigger and bigger and bigger, man. And when the guy put on the demo to master it, and the intro came in, he pulled off his headset and said, boy, you don't waste any time. You get right into it, don't you? Well, usually they say you got to get the audience within the first 8 bars. Well, we had them in the first 2 with that jap tukatum bang. They wanted to hear what's coming next. So, like I'm saying, man, I'm telling the truth when I say, sometimes you might say, oh, I didn't, yeah, and you might have some doubt, but I never, ever, because I was praying a lot at the time too. But the song didn't need it, really. That's why it's still living now. Thank you, Jesus.
Just say some of the people I played with were.
Some of the people I've shared the stage with?
Yes.
Liza Minnelli, Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, the Jacksons, the OJs. Oh man.
How about did you ever with Mary Wells?
Oh, see what I'm
digging.
Mary and I were just like, but see, Mary and I were sisters and brothers practically for years, you know what I mean? I even picked her up for gigs, when she didn't have transportation and all this stuff, man. Mary Wells, Brenda Holloway, Diana Ross, the Supremes, the Marvelettes, Martha and the Vandellas, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, the Temptations, the Four Tops, the Four Freshmen, the Four Lads, the Diamonds, Tab Hunter, Linda Ronstadt, man, Flip Wilson, Merv Griffin Show, Mike Douglas Show, and that was just one decade. Okay, here we go now. The Kool and the Gang, Hughes Corporation, Mandrill, Betty Wright, Barbara Lewis, oh man, Three Dog Night, America, the Spinners, the Whispers, the Moonglows. The important people, Little Richard, I didn't even mention him, shit. Oh. Now, one of the most important performances that I gotta admit was with Dizzy Gillespie in South Africa in '77. I had been to South Africa in '75 to do the International Backgammon Tournament in Maseru in the country of Lesotho, because at that time it was the Republic of South Africa, which wasn't multiracial, and The only integrated province was Lesotho. So you fly into Johannesburg and you go down to Lesotho and you can mingle there. That's where they had the International Backgammon Tournament. And I did 2 weeks there at the Holiday Inn in Maseru. And in '77, they didn't have a music school in South Africa. And they got together, the Rutger Livingston jazz professors, along with Dizzy Gillespie, and Mark Montgomery, Freddie Waits, Kenny Barron, keyboardist, Larry Ridley, bassist, Frank Foster, saxophonist, and we all went over for 2 weeks. They had me come with them because of my success in '75 in Maseru. They had me come as assistant ambassador to Dizzy Gillespie, and we performed for the Queen, and it was really great. That was one of the highlights. And the other one was my performance at Carnegie Hall in '78, '79, with the group Enchantment. And what was the other group, man? It was one of those heavy metal groups. They did a thing called Bang a Gong. And we did it in Carnegie Hall, and that was the first time I'd ever seen $1 million check, because they had to put up $1 million check in order to have the laser show inside the building, in case it blows up, of course. And I said, well, they're putting up $1 million in case the laser blows up the building, but why are we in here? Enjoyed the show and hope you heard something that lifted your spirits and made you happy, and something that you could sing along with, and something that's going to take you out in the casino and win you a lot of money, and something that's going to follow you all the way home and be with you until you see my next DVD or until you come to my next concert. But however, God bless, and look out for the next one.